Fact or fiction, truth or conspiracy theory? Listen to television personality Karen Turk expose mainstream media, fake news, and hypocrisy with truth bombs on Behind the Headlines, 3 p.m. Saturdays on News Radio 1290 WJNO.
Behind the Headlines, where we sift through the clickbait news in a search for the truth. If you're catching the show on WJNO on Saturday afternoon, I want to remind everyone listening to our broadcast that you can also catch the video cast on YouTube at Behind the Headlines TV. And we're everywhere that you catch great podcasts, from iHeart to Spotify and more. Our podcasts and video casts have exclusive Behind the Headlines interviews and content that you won't catch on the radio show, so you're going to want to visit us there. Every week, we bring you the latest hot topics in the headlines, from entertainment to politics. And of course, our Death and Taxes segment with the always entertaining Julio Gonzalez, America's tax reform expert. There's no shortage of fake news and salacious headlines this week, so let's dig in. Cancel culture just continues to dominate, and the number of ridiculous things being flagged and censored continues to hit the headlines. Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog have been added to the censored list, as Disney has again jumped on the banishment train to add warnings to classic shows and movies, including Dumbo, The Aristocats, and of course that horribly offensive movie that depicted traditional male and female roles played by two dogs, Lady and the Tramp. Disney's reasoning for this one was actually the Siamese cats, that they perpetuate Asian xenophobia. The icing on the cake is the new warning label on the uploaded classic episodes of The Muppets. The warning says the show includes negative depictions and mistreatment of people and cultures, that these stereotypes were wrong then and they're wrong now. So wait, now the diversity that PC culture claims to want so badly, that's also being canceled. Here comes the hypocrisy again. The Muppet Show had a cast of characters depicting every race and gender with lighthearted comedy. Everyone coexisted together in the name of fun and comedy, but now instead of celebrating the interspecies union of Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog, which was way ahead of its time, we're now creating cancel culture for this show because a Swedish chef was a bit unhinged. Thankfully, in addition to flagging this show for offensive content, it's only accessible to adult accounts. Well, if you aren't woke enough yet, don't worry, there's more. Attention, cereal lovers. Your dream of having a militant chocolate fist for breakfast has finally come true. You can have Black Lives Matter for breakfast. Bordering on both the absurd and offensive, we present to you Proud Puffs, a vegan cereal that comes in the shape of, you guessed it, little black fists. Inventor Nick King, who by the way lives in the posh town of Darien, Connecticut, has over 600 pre-orders of this product. King feels his manufacturing challenges have been because he is a Black-owned small business, but in reality, it's probably due to the fact that this is just a straight-up ridiculous product. I mean, what are they going to do about the white milk? King calls his product cereal for culture. So does that mean the Catholics should have a cereal full of crosses and Jews need a bunch of bite-sized dreidels? I mean, if they get representation, so shouldn't everyone else? The biggest problem that I see with this product and so many more is the fact that not everything in life needs to be racially motivated. Nobody is picking up a box of Cheerios and saying, I'm not going to eat these because they don't match my skin color. I think this really promotes division by saying that the cereal is just for one color of people. I've never seen that written on a box of Lucky Charms, and they're chock full of Irish representation, as well as being magically delicious. I don't remember the leprechaun singling out fellow Irishmen. I do think it's super ironic how we're supposed to embrace little black fists while canceling Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's. So let me get this straight. An iconic black woman on a jar of syrup is offensive, but puffy little black fists that are reminiscent of the Black Panther Party, which had a part in deadly shootouts, that's culturally acceptable. I'm not claiming that racism doesn't exist. What I'm saying is not everything is racist, and that includes breakfast foods. The fact that I even have to clarify this just shows how distorted we become. Before you think I'm going to be completely anti-Hollywood on today's episode, I want to surprise all of you with something that's amazing that's come out of Hollywood this week. The latest Netflix hit, I Care a Lot, brings to the screen an issue that has been far overlooked all over our country. Here's a little clip.
Good morning, Miss Peterson. I'm sorry to disturb you so early. The court has ruled that you require assistance in taking care of yourself.
I'm fine.
I'm afraid it's not up to you to decide. The court has appointed me to be your legal guardian.
What?
You have to come with me.
In this dark comedy that mimics reality, I Care a Lot is the latest movie to hit the top of the Netflix charts, with viewers finding themselves shockingly compelled by the actions of villainous guardian Marla Grayson, played by Rosamund Pike. I couldn't be happier about this movie getting the attention that it is. Many of Marla's actions seem as if they could only be written by a Hollywood screenwriter. She's a truly despicable villain that forces the elderly into guardianship and then steals from them. But what if I told you that this story was based on reality? What if I was to tell you that it was written based on many true stories? Guardianship is happening to an estimated 1.5 million people in this country, and for the most part, this topic has been ignored by the mainstream media. I know this is hard to believe, but truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. I can tell you this because my own mother's story had parallels to this one. I have in some ways lived this. If there's something that deserves to be woke to, it's this topic, and I'm really proud to say that there are some powerful people beginning to get clued in. This is a real sinister agenda. A week ago, I was jumping up and down when I saw that Bernard Kerik, the former police commissioner for New York and New York Times bestselling author, had covered the topic for Newsmax in a piece he called The Silent Epidemic, Preying on America's Elderly. He did that for Kerik Watch, and now I want to welcome him to the show.
Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'm good. So good to have you. This movie that's come out has really shined a light. There's so much buzz on the internet this week about guardianship. And I know you've become a real crusader in this space for families that need real attention to this very real issue. You think it's something that's fictional, but it's not.
Well, listen, first of all, I'm glad the movie's out. I personally have not gotten to see it. I know people that have. It's getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But I have to tell you, before this, look, I was in law enforcement for 35 years almost, and, running the largest police department in the nation. I had no idea that this type of thing existed, and that it was a real problem. And given what I know now, as I've said consistently for the last few weeks, I honestly believe the Justice Department, the U.S. Justice Department, state attorneys general, they have to start getting involved. They have to look at these cases. There are cases, overwhelming cases, where people have gone into court, filed petitions and motions, removed family members away from loved ones, taken control of an elderly person's assets, and the family has nothing. There's nothing they can do about it. It's like having somebody come in and just taking over your life without your loved ones or anyone around you being able to do anything about it. It's a bizarre, really strange thing that's going on. And I don't think many people in the United States, unless it's had an impact on you, I don't think they get it. I don't think they know this stuff existed. And I did not until I got involved in the Bashinsky investigation that I'm working on now down in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah, and we're so glad to have you on that case. That's a really important case. It's a high profile case, and I think it's going to shed a lot of light on this. But I had this happen to me. I allowed the guardianship to happen. I was just as naive as most people are. I thought, okay, a professional guardian. This is somebody who's going to advocate for my family, somebody who's going to help us in our fight against the nursing home. And I realized very quickly that I had gotten myself in a situation where I was then hogtied, and I had no rights as a daughter, and my mother's rights were stripped as well. And you don't think that that can happen in America. You don't realize that the system has this many, arms and tentacles. And all of a sudden, you realize when you get involved in this, and I've been fighting for this for about 2 years now, you realize that unfortunately, this is a hotbed of corruption and it runs really deep. And it seems that a lot of the state attorneys do know what's happening. And I don't know if they feel powerless or it's these elected judges and other officials that are all in bed together that prevent action from being taken. I could speculate all day, but I've been completely amazed at the lack of action that we've had in just some of these cases. It seemed to be so illogical and so criminal, but yet it seems that the states won't act. And it brings up an interesting point for me. I believe that we need to do something on a federal issue. And do you believe that that might happen, that the DOJ might get involved?
Well, look, I think one of the problems is that this is an incestuous type thing that goes on in various communities, counties, and states, right? In the Bashinsky case, what we've had, and I don't want to give up some of the elements of the investigation that we've uncovered and that we're looking at, but I will tell you that we were told, one of our people were told in the courthouse, as we've gone in to look for records, pull files, and other things, one of the clerks in the courthouse said, "Wow, this is pretty wild. These guys have been doing this for years, and until Bashinsky, nobody ever fought back." Which, in this, I relate that in a sense to you. You thought that this was a good thing. You thought that somebody would be looking out for your loved one's interest. And at the end of the day, that's not really the case. This is, and in Bashinsky's case, this was, there's lawyers involved, there's a judge involved, two different judges. The guardians, in the conservator, guardian, whatever you want to call it, is involved, and they all know each other. They also know the state's prosecutors. That it's an incestuous thing, and I think that's why a lot of the state's attorneys do not want to get involved. But in the Bashinsky case, I will tell you that we have found some of the same elements in several other cases where the one specific guardian has gone into other cases and depleted finances, destroyed families, and I honestly believe there's elements for a civil RICO in Birmingham, Alabama, when it's all put together. And hopefully that's what's going to happen. We'll put it together. We're going to run it up the chain to the Department of Justice and hand them a package that I think they could use for a prosecution, a criminal prosecution against these people.
We need you down here in Florida too, because I've been saying RICO for years. And I know you've spoken to my friend Rick Black, who's with the Center for Estate and Administration Reform. And one of the first conversations that I had with him, and he's been somebody who's been involved in this space for about 8 years because of a personal struggle with his own family. And again, a lot of us don't end up in this fight until you actually live it and your eyes are open and you say, this is unbelievable. Why isn't somebody doing something? And the fact that you bring up RICO makes me so happy, because we've said all along that there's something there and something needs to be done. And down here in Florida, just like the Bajanti case in Alabama, we have a similar situation. We have attorneys that have been practicing for 30 years. I'll give you a perfect example as the attorneys in my case. They've been practicing for 30 years, and they actually had a $16.4 million jury judgment against them for doing a family wrong in guardianship. And yet the Florida bar did nothing. They're still practicing, and they came and took my mother and got involved in litigation and appointed a guardian. And it's really hard for, somebody to just absorb logically that, after a jury judgment like that in such a public case, that it's just business as usual. But apparently that's the way it goes.
I have to tell you, Karen, it's almost like one of these frightening movies where somebody moves into your home and you can't get them out, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't do it through court. You can't do it through anyone else. This is the same thing. These guardians get into the lives of these elderly people, and there's nothing. If you don't have a judge that is an ethical judge and abides by the law, those people are there to stay, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they destroy lives. They deplete their assets, the money. They take their property, they sell their property, I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, and when you look at this stuff as an outsider, as somebody that's never been involved in this element before, I got to tell you, I was shocked, completely shocked at what they can do, what they have the ability to do, and that nobody is doing anything about it.
And I'm glad you used the word incestuous because I've been saying that for a long time. It's like these guardians and everybody, it's just an incestuous orgy. It's just all of these people connected in bed together. And it's unbelievable that this goes on in our court systems, in our states. And it's not just, it's not just Florida. It's just not just Alabama. We're talking Nevada. We're talking almost every state in our country where there are elected judges. We seem to have this problem. And from what I've seen, there aren't a lot of good probate judges. It's actually not the norm, is this sort of hotbed of incestuous corruption. And that's a really scary thing when you think about the fact that there's 1.5 million people in guardianship. And for most of us not living this experience, you think that this would be an ethical process.
You know what, Karen? You know what's funny, and I didn't realize this until I got involved in Ms. Brzezinski's case. Um, the probate judges in many of these cases, they're just lawyers from the local counties and communities, and they are tied in to all the other lawyers. So they're a lawyer that gets appointed to become a probate judge, and now they're connected to all their friends, and they give out these guardianships. It's crazy, and somebody has to do something about it. There has to be a way to monitor it, to ensure that they're abiding by the rules of ethics and the laws. And when they don't, they have to be held accountable. And I think that's the problem. We don't have anybody looking at this. States attorneys, as Rick Black will tell you, many states attorneys, they don't want to get involved. It's too political. But I honestly believe if it's packaged right and you can prove a civil case against them, I honestly think the Justice Department can come in and enforce a criminal case and lock these people up, because that's what should happen.
That's amazing. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. It's music to my ears. I'm so glad that you're in this fight with us. I really think that having you on our team is going to make a huge difference. And I'm so glad that this movie's out and that we're shedding attention on this. And I know this isn't going to be the first time that we talk about this on this show, because obviously it's something that I'm really passionate about. But I look forward the next time we cover this on the show to maybe have some positive news, and maybe you can give us an update on some stuff moving forward. So I want to say thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Karen.
We'll be right back with more Behind the Headlines after this quick commercial break.
Engineer Tax Services is a licensed engineering firm that focuses on federal, state, and local tax benefits, and is now the country's largest specialty tax firms, and it specializes in preserving wealth and the United States job creation. Founder and CEO Julio Gonzalez is an expert in tax reform whose strong presence helps define our current tax laws. Under Julio's guidance and the accurate insight into how the industry is shaping, Engineer Tax Services is one of the largest, fast-growing, and most innovative firms.
Fact or fiction, truth or conspiracy theory. Listen to television personality Karen Turk expose mainstream media, fake news, and hypocrisy with truth bombs on Behind the Headlines, 3 p.m. Saturdays on News Radio 1290 WJNO.
And we're back. It's time for more Behind the Headlines. And as we do each week, I want to welcome America's tax reform expert, Julio Gonzalez, for our Death and Taxes segment. And welcome back to Death and Taxes with my friend Julio Gonzalez.
Karen, you promised me one thing last time.
I know, the costume.
You were going to be the
Grim Reaper. I'm going to do it. But you know what? I got to get people to watch the show. So I figure we keep them guessing for like 2 or 3 episodes.
I think they'll watch
and then I'll
the
throw
show
it
if
on
you
them.
put the Grim Reaper suit on.
But they're watching and waiting right now. So if I do it next time, at least we're one more episode in.
All right, well, we have some Grim Reaper things going on.
We really do. There's a lot of fake news this week.
I know. Listen, fake news. I think that the media, and this is really upsetting to me. I mean, like the Supreme Court ruled that New York State Attorney can have Donald Trump's tax returns.
Yeah.
But Karen, here's the thing, and I don't know why the media doesn't address this. The state of New York has had its tax returns every year for the last several decades, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he turns them in, right? They review them. The state authority there reviews them. They go through them with a fine-tooth comb. They've been through his tax returns. If there were any fraud issues, the state tax department would certainly audit them.
Right.
There, it would be in the courts, right? It's nothing. I mean, they probably negotiated on a few things, but at the end of the day, they signed off, right? So that's one thing. Obviously, the IRS has been through these tax returns
Yeah.
at a very high level,
Mm-hmm.
which the state rolls up to the federal.
Right.
And the IRS, again, he probably has his tax returns looked at by the IRS, by the state of New York Treasury Department, more than anyone in the country. And by the way, the CPA that's signing off on these tax returns, the poor CPA that's caught in the middle of the Department of Justice and Donald Trump, who's saying, I kind of have to keep these, I can't give them over.
Yeah.
Because I signed the contract. They wouldn't sign off on a tax return with fraud. They wouldn't put their name on it.
Why would they put their name on it,
They
right? Why would
wouldn't-
they protect him? This is the thing that's wild about it.
CPA firms are there to go through it, audit it, make sure that they've gone through and checked everything, every line item, right? Because if you're doing Donald Trump's tax returns, you're not signing off on it
Yeah.
without double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking before you put your name on it that says, I can lose my license, I can go to jail if I report anything on a tax return. And he's with Mazars, so that's a big reputable tax return firm up there.
Yeah.
But again, audited by the state, audited by the IRS. So, the Supreme Court's like, listen, we just don't want to get involved. This is a state issue. I understand that. I mean, I think they should have superseded her. But the real question is, all right, they're going to say, listen, this is really, throw it down to the state. And the state's like, okay, we're going to take it, right? Because, of course, the state, they're a very liberal government there.
Yeah, of course.
But what are they, the state's already had it.
I can't believe when I saw the article come out in Vanity Fair, I immediately thought about you and I thought, how is this happening again? It seems like Groundhog Day again. It seems like Groundhog Day.
And remember, who got the tax returns a month ago?
New York Post. And how did they get them? What's your prediction on that?
Well, I mean, certainly whoever had them, got probably paid pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who had access to them? Probably, an employee, someone had access to them and gave it to them, but for a nice check, I'm sure. Scary. And I'm sure that'll be investigated. But the bottom line is they couldn't find anything. And so now these tax returns go to the district attorney. Well, how can he read them? They've been already audited by your state.
Yeah.
Your state tax authority.
So this whole thing is going nowhere.
Well, I mean, again,
the media's just going to twist it and twist it and twist it, and at the end
why
of the day...
hasn't the media said, listen, Mr. State Attorney, why don't you just go to your state tax department that reviews all these tax returns and ask, why weren't they audited? Why didn't you have any issues? I mean, don't they trust their own employees?
Apparently not. Apparently not. It seems like they're all out for blood. Everybody's sort of infighting now. There's also infighting just in this one group of people where it just seems like not only are they desperate to do anything they can to discredit Donald Trump, which has been the story for, 4 years now, but it almost seems like there's a lot of infighting now that's going on, which I think actually could be a blessing in disguise. Because the more they fight amongst themselves and the more turmoil there is, the more chance we have to maybe get some elected officials in some of these seats and in positions of power to make change, because this is ridiculous. This is totally unproductive for the people of New York.
Listen, I'm in the tax business, and I can't imagine having to get with the Department of Justice of any state, the state attorney, and have to deal with that pressure of having to give over someone's tax information when I've signed an agreement that I can't do that.
Yeah.
And now I'm having to hire an attorney to figure out what
you
I have to do.
Right.
And that just we don't have the money to pay for that stuff. We don't even want to get involved. We just want to do our job.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and there's not supposed to be all this transparency. I mean, this is supposed to be, he's supposed to file the return, it's supposed to be overlooked, and then after the return is filed and it's accepted, imagine that everything gets unraveled the way that it has. And I don't think that this would happen to anybody else except for Donald Trump.
Well, look, I think there's two things there. Every president, right, for the last 3 decades has turned over their tax returns when they're running. But those guys didn't run big corporations. And within his tax returns, I think he's got his trademarks in there, his secret sauce, his recipes on how to be tax efficient. And I don't think he wants to turn that over to his competitors that are in the real estate industry, right? I don't think he wants to say, here's how I do it.
Here's
better
my
than
template
anyone.
for success.
Here's my template. Why? You know, the other ones, it's like Biden. It's like, well, you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Obama, right? You didn't do anything. You got fees.
Yeah.
For doing a speech.
Yeah.
But when you're that real estate guy, why do you want to give over your secrets? And I can understand. Like, listen, I'm trying to protect myself, and you know, and protect my business. I don't think it's not required.
Right. You wouldn't want somebody to have the template.
But it's
to
not
your
required.
success. Right.
You know, it's just like, okay, people do it to have a good story or whatever. Listen, the bottom line is they know that Trump maybe didn't pay as much taxes because he had tax write-offs, but he was the one that took the risk, that paid the payroll taxes, that paid the property taxes, that paid the sales tax. He created the most tax.
Well, and you know what? The beauty of that is, I talk about this all the time on this show, is that's what you do at Engineered Tax Services. You're actually here to save people money, to put money back in their pocket, to use tax credits, to use the system legally in order to give people what they need to get in order to save them money.
And, you know, this final thing, Karen, New York gave him the tax credits. Because why? Because that building was sitting vacant, not creating any property tax, not creating any sales tax, not creating any employment tax. He took that building, brought it back to life, and now it's one of the iconic buildings in New York that produces the most tax income to the state. They should be grateful.
They should. Well, we'll be back. We'll be back next time with Death and Taxes. Maybe I'll have that Grim Reaper costume on next week.
Let's hope.
Stay tuned.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Headlines. We'll have more happening next Saturday at 3 p.m. on WJNO in South Florida and everywhere else on iHeart Podcasts and on Spotify. To get your daily dose of eye-popping headlines, visit www.behindtheheadlinestv.com and subscribe for the latest news delivered right to your inbox. I'm Karen Turk, and I'll catch everyone back here next week with another great lineup.
Fact or fiction, truth or conspiracy theory. Listen to television personality Karen Turk expose mainstream media, fake news, and hypocrisy with truth bombs on Behind the Headlines, 3 p.m. Saturdays on News Radio 1290 WJNO.